Alright, hello and welcome to Camel Finance. I'm your boy Camel, and it's not enough to want to get into crypto. Now is the time you need to get into crypto before the biggest economic crash in history. The Ethereum merge is officially live, but the price doesn't care, apparently. The price does not care. No effect of a triple halving as of yet. That remains to be seen. Still currently looking for longs, but haven't quite seen one yet. I will continue to update. We'll get to the charts in just a second. South Korea has issued an arrest warrant for Luna founder Do Kwon. So I wonder if he will actually be arrested. China is back to being a top 10 Bitcoin and crypto using country despite its ban. So it just goes to show that the more you attack this network, the more you try to ban it, then the worse you look and the stronger and better Bitcoin looks. Fidelity Digital Assets has said that Bitcoin mining will use less than 0.5% of global energy if Bitcoin hits $2 million. And at that price, still only using, as you can see, 0.5% of the global energy. $500 million financing of vented methane Bitcoin mining is taking place. This is going to make the entire Bitcoin network carbon negative. It's going to remove 36 million tons of carbon dioxide per year and is equal to planting 2.5 billion trees. This further decentralizes the Bitcoin network and it ends the environmental fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So have we bottomed? Willy Woo thinks that, at least historically, bottoms coincide with short-term holders having a lower cost basis than the longer-term holders. He says we're close, but we're not there yet. Might be some time to burn, in his opinion. So as you can see, we haven't quite dipped into this negative territory yet and recovered. He also says he likes to quantify accumulation as coins moving away from sellers to urgent buyers. The red line tracks this. The black arrows are all the same height. So all of these black arrows are the same height, and the red line tracks the accumulation. So far, we haven't had the levels of accumulation synonymous to prior bottoms. So again, do we need a little bit more time? Do we need to head towards that cycle low in the second week of November? And lastly, from Willy Woo, in terms of max pain, the market hasn't felt the same pain as prior bottoms. We can see this in the blue line, which is supply in profit at the bottom of this chart here. So we haven't got to the same level of pain as we did before. But I'd like to point out here that when we got down to these levels the last time, it was following a blow-off top, a blow-off parabolic top. And this time around, we didn't get that. We got instead a Wyckoff distribution top. So there's, I think, an argument to be made that because we didn't have such an extreme upside, we don't have to have such an extreme downside, although that doesn't mean that that isn't coming. We've only reached 52% of coins being underwater so far, and prior bottoms were 61, 64, and 57. So maybe we need to just go a little bit lower, just to cause a bit more pain before we can truly find that bottom. If you look at the extreme capitulation shown here, then you can see that this was 48 days, this was 48 days, 127, currently on 94 days. So we are right around the time when you'd expect to see a bottom. Is this going to end up being slightly longer than before? We'll soon find out. I do think we're very close though. However, Bitcoin doesn't care. It's still growing faster than the internet, as you can see here. So the internet is this green line. 7.5 years. You can see this slope. Whereas here's Bitcoin, and it's on track to reach 1 billion users in 4 years from 2021. So it means it's going to carry out the same growth as the internet did in 7.5 years in just 4 years. Most importantly, we are still on track to reach 1 billion users by 2025. So as you probably know, I'm sure you do, we had a US CPI print of 8.3%. This was below the prior month at 8.5%. And the market did not like it. The Nasdaq 100 fell, and what's interesting about when the Nasdaq 100 fell is every single stock in the Nasdaq 100 fell. This is the first time this has happened since March 2020, which was of course the C19 crash. UK inflation has followed suit and has fallen to 9.9%, which is the first drop since September last year. Are we approaching peak inflation? Have we seen peak inflation? Well, the data kind of suggests that we might have. I showed this in my last CPI breakdown, and I said that this is what threw us, shelter. Shelter is driving US CPI, but it is cracking rapidly. There's more cities with lower rents happening than there are prices. New homes for sale over sales ratio is at June 08 levels, and then you compare that with the prices. So you can see that Shelter is cracking rapidly, and here's another illustration which shows it even better. You can see that Shelter is absolutely collapsing here, okay? Furthermore, the small business pricing plans have been a very, very, very reliable indicator for inflation, and this is in the red here against the CPI, the US CPI in black. And as you can see, again, as with the Shelter before diving off a cliff, we also have the small business pricing plans falling off a cliff. This usually leads CPI and would suggest that we're about to get a very low CPI print in the following month. And to continue this theme, we're also seeing M2 in orange falling off a cliff and core CPI likely due to follow. So whilst the market has mostly interpreted the recent CPI print as bearish, it's quite possible that the market is on the wrong side at the moment. Remember though, just because CPI is coming off doesn't necessarily mean that food and energy and everything else is going to get cheaper. And in fact, the consumer price index for all urban consumers shows that the food prices are rocketing. One thing I do know, fund managers surveyed by the Bank of America expect global profits to fall over the next 12 months. They're more negative about their profit outlook than any other time in the 25-year history of this survey. So as you can see, pessimism is at historic lows, 2.5-decade lows. Now, before we go into the charts, I wanted to point this out. I saw this and I started to get giddy because this is exactly what I think is going to happen. This is exactly what I think the catalyst for the absolute top of the market is going to be. If you've watched this channel for a while, you will probably already heard me say this. I have definitely mentioned it on this channel multiple times. But I appreciate there's a lot of new subscribers, I think, since I last said it. So I'm going to briefly cover this now. Nancy Pelosi has just said that they believe they will have a stock trading ban that can come up for vote this month. So why is this significant? Because I believe this is actually going to be the true catalyst for the top of the market. I also believe that the lows are in, and until we take out the lows, then I will maintain that stance. I've got here the SPY, which I'm going to use as my proxy for the S&P 500. So I'm going to show you, and I have said this before, what I think is going on. I think that this structure here, as I've been saying over and over again, is going to end up being the bottom. Now, lose these lows and I start to entertain shorts, and certainly if we take out these lows here, then I think that opens up a huge 50% drop, okay? But until we take out these lows, then there's no early warning sign. This would be the early warning sign, and taking out these lows would be I'm completely wrong in my thesis. All the while we're above these lows, then my thesis is still correct. So here's what I expect to happen. I expect this to end up being the bottom structure. I think we make our way out of here and up towards 5,000 to 5,200. I have been calling for a pivot to occur between September and October. So let's mark that somewhere in this neighborhood here. This is where I expect a pivot to come from the Fed. Now, admittedly, doesn't look likely at the moment. Really doesn't look likely, but you can never believe anything they say. They were telling us inflation was transitory. Then they were telling us that 2 negative quarters of GDP growth does not equal a recession. So they have a history of lying. They have a history of not being trustworthy. Anyway, this is what I think is going to play out. And whilst nobody really thinks this is likely, this is how I see it. Then I think what happens, and I have said this before, is Congress is banned from owning stocks. They always frame this sort of thing in the context of protecting investors. They pretend like they care about the retail investor. They pretend like they care about the people. However, of course they don't. So I think what they're going to do is pump this thing up here. And also a quick side note is Nancy Pelosi was buying Apple in this area here, as well as other stocks. So read into that what you will. But I think what they're going to do is pump this up to new highs, then frame it as, oh, we're going to protect investors. It's not fair that people like Pelosi get to just insider trade and have no consequence. They're going to ban them all from having stocks, ban them all from owning stocks. That will let them out right at the top. And that will be the catalyst for what I believe will be the Great Depression 2.0, full Great Reset, CBDCs roll out, having to reliquify the system, resetting the price of gold, possibly pegging gold to CBDCs or whatever the new currency system is. So that's how I see it. Obviously, this is getting ahead of ourselves. We first need to hold these lows and see if we can rally out of here. All of this becomes invalidated if we take out these lows, as I've said. But When I saw this, I just thought it's interesting. Very, very interesting, because this has been my theory all along. And if you go back and watch the earlier videos on the channel, I've literally been saying this all the way since back here. I made a video where Pelosi bought Apple stock back here. I've been calling for the pivot in September and October. If you've been watching the channel, you'll know that. So this is not the first time I've shown this scenario, not the first time I've mentioned that Congress will get banned from owning, and that will basically let everyone in the government out at the top. But this is how I see it. I could very, very quickly be proven wrong on this by taking out these lows. And that's fine. If that's the case, then I'll just go short. It's not the end of the world. But this is basically how I see the scenario playing out. So that is that. All right, the dollar. Let's take a look at a few charts. I don't really have much to say about the charts because not a lot has changed. Trying to make a new high, kind of failing for now, although we've seen this so many times before that who knows what will happen. Certainly due a top soon, but of course it is the strongest currency out of the dying herd. And of course cooling off here would see risk come on pretty quickly. Taking a look at the S&P, well, we're still above the lows, right? So I think possibly we can get a rally out of here. Possibly it's waiting for some kind of news-driven catalyst, or maybe we're just looking to hold these lows for a day or two more to let people build enough confidence to start longing. Of course, take out these lows and it's a completely different story, as I've said a dozen times. Looking at the NASDAQ, kind of exactly the same story really as you'd expect. Volatility is coming off, so still kind of in this neighborhood, but we've got a VIX at 26. Above 26 and above, you need a 0.5% decline every day in the S&P 500 just to keep it there. So of course that could happen, but given that this is likely the cycle low here, I think it's unlikely that we're going to have a day 4 high and then spend the remaining 38 days trending down. Seems more likely that we'd at least come up and make some secondary high, and that would if we were going to fail. So that's that. What else we got? Real kind of boring, hanging on in there, still above the entry just about. So we'll see how this goes, but tiny stops, so not really too fussed about that. Oil really trying to rally. It's defended this level well. There's a lot of complicated stuff going on with strategic petroleum reserves in America and the Saudis telling us that they are going to increase supply. So we'll see how this goes. Gold looks absolutely terrible, doesn't it? Taking out this low. I think we're kind of forced to accept that this is going to fail and fail massively. We lose this red level here, this red line, and I don't really see how we don't plunge. So perhaps that's coming. Doesn't really make any sense to me, but you can't really argue with the chart. The charts don't lie. So the charts are telling us this is a terrible look. Silver was holding up relatively well, still holding up relatively well. Maybe this is a bull flag that can break to the upside, or maybe this is just going to trickle down and lose this level. I think if we lose this level, we'll be forced to cut that trade as well. No point holding it all the way down here. It's in the form of the miners, so keep an eye on that. But again, not really much we can do. Just have to let it play out. Bitcoin still kind of sideways. Haven't seen any kind of momentum to the upside as of yet, but I am still looking to entertain a long from here. But this is obviously not really longable. This is much more of a bear flag at the moment. So we'll just play patient with this. I'm sure we can find some setup soon and some momentum will return eventually. Ethereum obviously completed its merge. No one actually seems to care. At least price doesn't seem to care. So maybe if we can get back above here, we can call this a breakout of this line. We don't really need this line anymore, do we? So these are our two lines, one starting from here and one starting all the way up there. So perhaps they can be traded. We'll have to wait and see until we've got no real direction though, have we? It's just this, so we have to wait and see until the chart can show us we've got direction, and then I think we can entertain a long. But for now, a little bit more patience required. XRP hanging on to its breakout, barely, haven't fallen back below this just yet. So long and strong, continue to push. Futures are flat ahead of a fresh batch of economic data, so we'll wait to see how that comes out, wait to see if we can get some momentum. Like I keep saying, lose the lows and we have to entertain shorts, and these lows are probably going to fail, but all the while we're above these lows, then we can entertain longs, particularly if we get a nice batch of economic data today. If you found value here today, I'd appreciate it if you could drop a like on the channel. Leave me a comment if you have anything to say or anything you want to see. Trade safe out there and enjoy your day. All the best from me. Take care. Cheers. Bye.